Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here at ReelAbilities Film Festival. You're here for the Expressions Through Art panel conversation, and we are incredibly excited because we have some amazing artists and panelists to share their work with us. Before that, I will just let you know quickly about what we have going on in the festival. We're actually here after a full day of events, and we have another screening after this one coming up. So if you caught any of the ones before, that's great. Thank you for being with us again. And I hope you can be with us for the ones right after this. And tomorrow is our closing night. So we really are just starting to cry over this ending so soon. Before we start, I will tell you a little bit about how to use this Zoom conversation that we're in, that the Q&A will take place in. So first of all, if you click on the button on the bottom that says closed captions, you will have closed captions come up on a screen. You just need to click on show subtitles. If it actually ends up changing too quickly for you, you can also click on view full transcripts, and that will open a little window on the side that will allow you to see the full conversation. In addition to that, we also have ASL interpretation here. So if you notice in either the gallery or speaker view, you can find Brandon's box. Brandon is our ASL interpreter. Hi, Brandon. And if you would like to make sure that he stays on screen, if you could just go to his window and click on pin video, you will be able to see him in the center of your screen, and that will allow you to keep an eye on him while also seeing our other panelists on the top of the screen. So for our panel today, which I'm about to introduce the moderator of, we will have moderated questions, and we will also have a chance for you all to ask questions at the end as well. The way that is going to work is by opening your chat box. So again, if you click on the button on the bottom, it says chat. We're going to ask you to actually not to use it for just general conversations, but just use it to submit questions to our panelists. You're welcome to type them in throughout the conversation. When we open the conversation to audiences, I will actually come back and I will call on those who typed in questions, and we will help you ask your questions live. So we will open your mics and let you direct your questions directly to the panelists. Just keep an eye on messages coming from me through the chat box, and then you will know when you're up next. And you're welcome to type those in throughout the conversation. At the end, I will call you back on to come ask those. And I think that's about it as far as how everything is going to work. I will just mention that you're welcome to use either the speaker view to see an individual speaker talk, or the gallery view to see all of our panelists together. So I am very, very happy to have our moderator here with us. Amanda Suarez runs the gallery at the Fountain House, which is an amazing organization that we've been partnering with in the past, which she will tell you some more about. But Amanda, thank you so much for being here with us. And I will let you introduce the panel and our panelists.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Yara. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us on today's panel, Expressions Through Art, where we're going to be navigating disabilities in art with our three artists this evening. I'm Amanda. I am blonde. I have hazel eyes. I'm a pretty white-looking Latina with a really fuzzy white sweater on this evening. I am the gallery manager at Fountain House Gallery. It's part of a large organization that's a clubhouse called Fountain House that works with adults that have been diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and major depression. So we provide some pretty wonderful resources for these members in a non-clinical setting. The gallery I work for is a professional space where a lot of those members who are creative and love making artwork can show their work in a really nice, supportive community environment. And it's a really fun place to work, so I'm really honored to be a part of this evening. So I thought the artists this evening can introduce themselves. I'll start with Ezra, if you'd like. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your artwork.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Ezra. I use he, him, they, them pronouns. I am a white Jewish man. I have a dark beard, curly hair, brown hair. I'm wearing a gray sweater. And in back of me are some books and some records. And to the right behind me in the corner are some rolled up canvases. I work in painting and sculpture and currently have an exhibition up in the space of the JCC with Yo-Yo Lin, one of the other panelists, and Romilly Alice Walden. So talk a little bit about that.
Great. Would you want to share some of your artwork right now with us?
Sure. Yara, are you gonna share screen?
So we're just going to wait a little bit. Yara's going to share a screen with us. Ezra's got a slideshow for us this evening with about 10 images or so of art that he's made.
So this one that we're viewing, I'm going to run through some of these fairly quickly, and then some I'll talk a little bit more in depth. But largely what we're going to be seeing are paintings and some sculpture work, and they're all within a body of work that I have been doing for a few years now, which is exploring color theory, color palettes based on the colors of medication that I take over time. So it changes over time as well, and I use them as a basis for creating abstract works that explore other parts of living with non-apparent illness and disability, and that's what we'll be seeing. So this first image is called Medication. It's 18 by 36 inches, and it's acrylic on canvas. The work is a orange background with a tight cluster of geometric shapes that produce an effect of falling and crashing, and they're bumping into each other. All the shapes are in variants of orange. Some of them have some are tan leather brown, some are in lighter mustard yellow, and then some have highlights underlining and outlining the shape with white. So this was the first painting that started off in that whole series that I just mentioned, the Medication. Next. These are the next three, and so they work together as a triptych. There are three paintings. The first is a landscape. To the left is a landscape-oriented rectangular pink piece with triangles and stripes in teal, orange, and blue. The second, the middle painting, is a portrait-oriented with a rectangular, it's oriented rectangular, and it's a teal piece background with triangles and stripes in orange, pink, and blue. And the third is also oriented in a portrait position, and it has an orange background with a blue sphere and a thick orange outline, a red ellipse, and outlined teal ellipses. There's a shape that resembles going down from the top to the bottom left of the painting. It resembles a bent spine. And so these were, again, packed to like my body of work in this painting series. And next. This painting is really when a lot of the work shifted to speaking more particular aspects of illness and disability. So this one is called Medication 6, Body Without Organs, Intensities Such as Pain. And it's a 6 by 4 foot painting. And what we're seeing is this painting, it has a dark and deep umber background, dark red umber background. It's layered with geometric triangular shapes in blue, green, and orange, and pink that are floating, rising, and falling, and they're crashing on the canvas, giving a sense of upending kinetic piercing. And this work was really the beginning of exploring what pain looks like and how mapping pain on the body and out of the body, and trying to explain and give verbalization to pain, something that feels so visceral yet abstract, especially given how so many people, especially folks who are Black and brown and people of color and women and trans women are usually not believed when it comes to pain within the medical racism that many experience. And so thinking a lot about how we can even give our own language to pain, and through that, through my abstraction, that's what I'm trying to do here. Next. So that work before and this work over here, which are 3 wooden planks that are leaning on the wall. They're taken from my family's sukkah, which is a hut that's built outdoors for the Jewish holiday of Sukkot. The leftmost plank is light yellow with magenta triangles painted throughout the surface, also in this seemingly floating and falling or crashing motion. The center plank is orange background with deep red triangles on it. And the rightmost plank has that deep red umber background with a white band on the top. And the way they're leaning on the wall, shadows are casted from each plank that creates 3 large triangles in that to create a structure of triangles. And so you're starting to notice that I work a lot with triangles with this shape. So I think a lot about triangles as a structure, a physical structure that is really strong, right? With each point, it is creating a really strong structure that's used in architecture and in the world around us. And also, I think it creates a lot of movement on a surface. And so it keeps the eye moving around. And so it gives a sense of motion, even if something is still and static. And so here I'm starting to think a lot about also within my Jewish identity, what kind of languages I have around structures and support structures, and creating abodes that give space for, making experiences of illness and disability something that maybe we can observe it as a festival, something that actually thinks about ritual and how we move through time and our days with living with illness and disability. And so this is leading me also to the next work, which is a newer work that I made this year that's up on view as well in the JCC exhibition called Rituals that I put together. And so when it reopens, hopefully some of you might go in person, but until then, I'll describe this. This one is called Sun Moon. It's 7 canvases that are each 18 by 24 inches. They're hung immediately next to each other, forming one large string of paintings. They all have a variety of triangles painted on them. From the left to right, the backgrounds are pink, blue, orange, yellow, sage green, maroon, and gray. And so on them is basically this different iteration of the shapes moving and the colors shifting. And so I think a lot about, it's called Sun Moon, Shemesh Levana. And again, thinking a lot about ritual and how there are cycles of ritual that happen naturally, right? Thinking about the sun and the moon day in, day out. We have 7 here thinking about the days of the week that we also think about in terms of productivity and capitalism. And so these are all structures that humans look to give meaning in our lives. And I'm thinking a lot about sort of the personal and the internal structures that I'm creating that come out of living with illness and disability, to the more societal structures that are, something that a lot of sick and disabled people do not quite fit into. So one being, productivity or labor, and thinking about the fluctuations of time, in ritualizing time that I do for myself, that I know other sick and disabled people do, that don't fit into this very strict structure that is imposed on a lot of us. Next. These paintings are also up in the exhibition. There are 3 large paintings called Disease, Health, Remission, from the left to the right, and they're Disease, Health, Remission, parentheses, or so they say. Again, thinking about these shifts of status of a body with illness and disability. And it's, often told in medical contexts of being so precise and so strict in those categories, but think a lot about fluctuation is really important. And how fluctuation and flexibility is part and parcel of being someone who identifies as disabled, who's living with illness. And that's something that I kind of want to push back on this, it's a push and pull with the medicalization and also of the socialization of illness and disability. And so I think we need to have more of an understanding of the interplay between both. Next. Here we see some more literal representation that I made out of plaster casts of medication bottles that I've taken. So they are white plaster casts that form a circle. There are 6 of them, but we only see 3 here. Their shadows are casting on the bottom, and on the top of the bottles, they have a child lock engraved on the top. And so some of them have these sort of paint splotches on them. And again, thinking about the cycle, how they can be reproduced, and also part of this marking of time day in, day out. Next. So looking at objects within illness and disability within day-to-day life, thinking how they're ritualized and become part of living with illness. This work is called Shortness of Breath, which now I made in 2016, and now of course has a lot of resonance with COVID-19, thinking about what you're looking out for. And so on the work is a metal rolling cart on the bottom, and on top of it lies a poster with the word Shortness of Breath, and surrounded by dirt, so everything else is obscured. It faces away from the camera, and it's surrounded by a sort of a tape on the floor. Between this and then on top of the metal poster is a steel piece that is leaning against the white wall behind it, and it's sort of sitting at the edge closest to the wall, and it's leaning onto a white bandage that is softening the leaning onto the wall. So next, this work is called You Shall Rejoice, and it features, again, looking to objects of illness and disability that inform ritual and living with illness and disability. We see a magic wand massager hanging from the ceiling. On it is, it's hanging from the ceiling onto a small wooden painting that's orange. On top of that, that is sitting on top of a blue heating pad, which is on top of a shower chair. And so all these objects are taken from the literal use of care, self-care in my life, and bringing them into a public space. We're thinking a lot about this blurring of the personal and the private with the social, and thinking about care in the same way, and care and sexuality as the same way. Things that are usually deemed with disability and illness as things that are not supposed to be talked about or supposed to be private. But what if we consider care in a way that actually is societal, that it is something that we can each participate and offer for one another as well? And so part of this work in this space, part of it was to get people to use the works, to use the objects within the work if they wanted for their own care in the space. And so a lot of people were using the massager on each other, giving and taking care. Next. These are works in that ethos, thinking about what's going on right now. My brother Noah and I made these new works for Visual AIDS, which is an art nonprofit that works with artists with HIV and AIDS. And we wrote an essay, which is on their site right now, exploring care during sickness, during sick time, and drawing relations between, pandemics, from the AIDS pandemic to now, what's happening now, and thinking through a disability justice lens around care and who's accessing care and who doesn't get care. So here we see two images of face masks. One on the top reads, "An army of the sick can't be defeated," and the one under it says, "To be scared of the sick is to be scared of the living." Next. And these two, there are another two now that are appearing on the screen. One face mask on the top reads, "Networks of care can and should also be contagious." And the one on the bottom reads, "Illness finds us all, but care unfortunately does not." And so these are all the works hoping to give you a sense of what it means to work from the very personal to the social, and how those two things are interlocked, and about so much more than just, one person. It's really, I'm thinking a lot about collective care, pain, and what it means to exist within a society that diminishes disability and illness. And that's what I'm working on. So the last two images that I'm showing you are of artwork in the exhibition that is up at the JCC right now. It's by an artist, Romilly Alice Walden. And we see over here an array of 7 fluorescent tubes. There are 2 sets of them with power strips and earbuds. The brightness of each tube are slightly different. And we see 2 people standing in front of them with their hands on one of their ears, and they're listening to part of the work. These are a set of 7 neon tubes. They have white earbud headphones, and they're using Arduino modules and small screens. And the title of this piece is "My Body is the House That I Live In." Each tube is a category of a wellness situation that a person was tracking throughout their days. And so the brightness shifts based off of that. The next image, and the last image, is a hand grabbing the headphones in a pile of wires with the Arduino modules and a small screen with green text on it. The reason I wanted to end with these is because you just saw some of my work that's in the exhibition, and you'll be hearing from Yo-Yo Lin, who's another artist in the exhibition, and Romilly Alice Walden. Yo-Yo and I are all thinking about rituals of illness and disability through mark making, through mapping, and through tracking, all through abstraction. And this is something that we were thinking about all together, and hoping to give you a little taste of this. Thank you. I know I went a little over time.
No, thank you so much, Ezra, for that. A lot of your pieces are, I'd say most of them obviously touch upon disability in some sort of way. And I think the message is very powerful and comes across, which is really great, because it has the audience, I think, consider something they may not have really thought about previously. I wanted to then introduce Yo-Yo Lin, who your colleague at the JCC. Yo-Yo, if you wanted to talk about, I guess, your pieces and how that fits in.
Sure. Hi guys. Thank you, Ezra, for just like a slew of amazing artwork. I've been friends with Ezra for like maybe a year now, and those are still some new works that I've never seen before. So thank you for sharing. So let me go ahead and share my screen. 1 second. Cool.
Do you mind self-describing?
What'd you say?
Do you mind self-describing for those at home?
Oh, yes, totally. So I am East Asian. I have long hair. The bottom half of my hair is dyed blonde. I'm wearing like a light blue sweater, and I'm in an empty room, and I'm wearing white earbuds, and I use she and her pronouns. Cool. So yeah, let me full screen this for you guys. I don't know why it always jumps to this page, so let me go back. So yeah, I'm an interdisciplinary new media artist, so a lot of my materials involve animation and projection and movement. I've been doing a lot more performance-based work lately, but I only started doing a lot of movement-based work recently because I started making more work about my chronic illness experience. I started creating this body of work called Motes of Embodiment. Motes of Embodiment is a project I started at the art residency I-Beam last year, and it's researching and developing different artistic methodologies for reclaiming and processing chronic health trauma. So I really wanted to create a space that was built in order to really see the generative nature of chronic illness and disability. And I also have like a non-apparent illness. I've been calling it an invisibilized illness recently. Just thinking about all the different ways that I've been experiencing a reality that often is not seen as real. So yeah, so there's 3 parts to this project, so I'm going to talk about the first part. The first part is called the Resilience Journal, and the Resilience Journal is a framework that I created over the course of last year, thinking about how to better put language to my chronic illness experience in a way that wasn't coming from a medicalized perspective. I experienced a lot of chronic pain. I experienced days that just kind of blur into each other. So a big part of what I wanted to make known was for myself to get some clarity on this experience. And a lot of the stuff that I've been, tracking are things that people don't normally track. So I like to call this soft data, and soft data is fuzzy, it's qualitative, it's nuanced, it's hard to describe. So the 7 different dimensions that I'm tracking of my illness include felt it, which is the chronic pain, logistical, which are any logistical obstacles I come across or have to ask for help from others, body image, social pressures, going to the doctor, which I recently changed into getting care, and future visions and past traumas. So I'm showing you a spread of my Resilience Journal. The Resilience Journal is essentially a moleskin book, and inside on the left are different days. So a list of 1 to 31, the number of days in the month of February 2019. And there's this tiny, tiny handwriting that I have describing what happens each day. And then on the right is a circular visualization showing all that information visualized. So each time something happened or the event presented itself in my life, I would color in a section of the circle, and based on the intensity of that experience, the color will be darker. So there's also a few different icons on top, different symbols that represent specific moments of my illness experience. So the circle has been essentially transformed into how I accommodate myself. And the X would be moments where I would think about death in honest various ways. And then a filled-in triangle would mean I had to explain it to someone. So often there's like a lot of labor that comes into needing to explain an illness that people can't see. Someone asked about it, which is a not filled-in triangle. And that means, you know, sometimes, I know Mia Mingus talks a lot about this, where you have to kind of just always come out all the time. And yeah, a star shape, meaning people accommodated. So yeah, I love tracking that one because over time, I've noticed that that is something people have been trying to do more for me. So yeah, I wanted to center these dimensions because I wanted to forefront the complex nuances of living with the chronic condition. And this was also to like disentangle myself from the medicalized body. But also more importantly, I wanted to focus on how simply acknowledging what is happening, especially when it comes to illness and trauma, is something we don't allow ourselves to do. I come from an immigrant family, and that is very much just like the status quo. It's like you don't talk about it, you don't recognize it, it's not something that is worth discussing to the public or, you know, even to other people in general. So yeah, so this was like a method for me to better understand my illness, but also became a way for me to use drawing, mark making, and writing to build a language about my illness experience. And I often go back to the quote that disability scholar Colin Cameron talks about. He talks about this thing called the disabling gaze. And it's something disabled people often experience, in which they're often required and expected to, in other people's eyes, to experience their own embodiment negatively. And he writes that there's a social expectation that impairment can only be endured or struggled against, but never lived in acceptance and enjoyment of the self. So this journal became a tool in refusing to conform to that social requirement. So I ended up making a small printed book with this same framework. Currently, I wanted to make more, but the printing press has kind of staggered its hours due to COVID. So if you are interested in getting one, just let me know. There's also a digital copy online for free that's tagged. So I'm showing an image of my journal that is the printed version, and on the cover is a golden circular visualization that resembles the one that I've drawn, and it's a golden stamp on a chip brown cardboard cover. And in the middle are different drawings that people have done and have sent to me of just how they've been visualizing their illness. And on the far right is a screenshot of an Instagram post of someone who's really enjoyed using the journal to track their chronic pain. And yeah, at the JCC, I decided to create a public format of tracking my illness. So I ended up drawing a giant circular visualization on the walls of the gallery that tracked the same 7 dimensions. So this image is of me drawing a giant circle onto a white wall. On the far left corner, it says March 2020, so I'm tracking the month of March. So the idea of it was I would go into the gallery.
I think Yo-Yo froze a little bit over here. Can you hear us, Yo-Yo?
I think we're having some technical difficulties, which might happen throughout the session. I'm sorry for that.
Sure. I can also share a little bit about this work, particularly while we troubleshoot with Yo-Yo.
Perfect.
So Yo-Yo was decided to create this in the space itself and would be coming in once a week over the month of March, filling in at home in her own journal, tracking, for the week, and would be coming in with someone or with a few people to talk about the work and think about what it means to practice on site an ongoing ritual. So thinking about ritual back to our exhibition was how this was also going to be enacted with other people, so that these rituals of care and around illness and disability are intertwined with other people, that none of it is outside of oneself, or it's not only inside oneself, it's really also like about other people and the care networks. And so taking up that kind of space is also really important, because often we don't, in our cultural spaces, don't actually see or hear or feel publicly experiences of illness and disability as something that is, something that's ongoing, something that is beautiful, something that is intricate, something that is enduring, right? And so that was the thinking behind the work. Of course, COVID-19 made it so that none of us were able to go to the space, and so Yo-Yo, I know, was filling out this work on her own, and
Yeah.
we shall see what happens with it.
Yo-Yo, so you're back if you want to say a few more nuggets about your piece before we talk with Rose.
Sure, yeah. Thank you, Ezra, for filling that in. That was like everything that I really wanted to say at the end of that. Is it okay if I just share one more image of just like how I've been tracking the journal over time?
Please.
Okay, I will be sharing right now. So can you guys all see like 3 images of a journal? Great. So yeah, this has been the month of March. And, this month has been absolutely wild. So I've been thinking a lot about how I began this ritual as like a way to make sense of my days, because living with chronic pain often blends them all together. And I'm seeing like people in the general public also having this problem of like all the days are blending together. Like I can't, what day is it? It's Wednesday. Like, and I'm really interested in seeing how, like there's all these tools and different methodologies out there in creating ritual when there isn't a routine and isn't a schedule. And I often see how in communities like ours, in the disability community, there's often a lot of these tools that have been developed out of a very important need. So I'm just turning to this journal more than ever, and I'm also seeing all kinds of different forms of CRIP wisdom that has been developed from disabled and chronically ill folks. So yeah, it's just like for those of us who have never had and never will return to a normal, what are the tools we have already that have been, there to honor our experiences and our wholeness? So yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you. I also just wanted to briefly say, I know you were saying how this journal has helped you kind of navigate your feelings towards everything you've been experiencing. And I think it's pretty amazing how the 3 panelists here this evening are so open about their, challenges that they faced. And, through their artwork, they're able to really express and share with others their experience, because I think that helps other people who may not be yet so comfortable talking about their own challenges. I think viewing other artists and other creative types go through something similar will help them in some way. So thank you guys again for, you know, the art you do. I think it's so important in terms of talking about disabilities and kind of breaking that stigma that people still feel these days. Rose, if you could also introduce yourself. I know you've got a song for us, so I'm really excited to hear you.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Rose Buchwald-Mcglennon. I am white. I have long brown hair, brown eyes, a black shirt on. I'm sitting in front of a bookcase, and I have my mahogany guitar on my lap. I'm 21 years old. I am from the Midwest, Minnesota/Wisconsin area. They're kind of the same thing. I'm currently in my 8th and final semester at Berklee College of Music out in Boston, Massachusetts. Not anymore, but I'm graduating in May with a bachelor's in songwriting. So that leads me to my next point. I am a singer-songwriter. I play guitar and violin. I tend to write a lot of pop music with slight folk influence. Yeah, and I'm really excited to be here. And I can just go right ahead into the song if everyone's cool with that.
Perfect.
A tiny bit about the song. I wrote it around 7 months ago. Back when I was in Boston, I went down to the Charles River Esplanade at like 8 in the morning, and I sat on the docks by the water, and I find a lot of peace and inspiration there. So I went there, came up with the chord progression, and then got cold, so I went home where I finished writing the lyrics. But I did have one line kind of sitting in my notes folder on my phone that I wanted to incorporate for sure. I just didn't know how. I tried to get in a different song, and that didn't work. And the line is, my empathy seems to empty me. So with that, I will begin. So this is called Passenger, and I struggle with a lot of anxiety and OCD and some depression. And I guess it's kind of like, it's always like having somebody sitting next to you, talking to you, you know, you can't really kick them out. They're always there. So this is called Passenger. By the way, can you hear the guitar okay?
Perfect.
All right. Thoughts have got me cornered. My worries know me best. My empathy seems to empty me. I wish I cared a little less. Oh, 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 oh. It's like I got a passenger with feet up on the dash, pressed against the glass like a passenger. And every person silhouette chokes me like smoke from a cigarette. Passenger, I got a passenger, got a passenger. In my head, constant confrontation between reality and fear. Only the storm, never the calm is welcome here. Oh, 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 oh. It's like I got a passenger with feet up on the dash, pressed against the glass like a passenger. And every present silhouette chokes me like smoke from a cigarette. Passenger, I got a passenger, got a passenger. I got a passenger. I got a passenger, got a passenger. demons will surrender. I pray, I pray, I pray. I pray these demons will surrender. I pray, I pray, I pray. But it's like I got a passenger, feet up on the dash, pressed against the glass like a passenger. An ever-present silhouette chokes me like smoke from a cigarette. Passenger, I got a passenger, got a passenger. I got a passenger. Oh, got a passenger. Got a passenger. In my head. Thank you.
That was really beautiful, Rose. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
How long would you say writing a song takes for you?
I'd say it takes anywhere. I'm always compiling little bits and phrases and things that just randomly pop into my head or that I see on the street or whatever, kind of in the notes app on my phone. So I always kind of draw from that. But in terms of putting the whole thing together, it can be anywhere from, I've written songs in a few hours, and I've also written songs in a few days. So it varies. But yeah, this one was a day. So
thank you. I do have a question for all three of you. I just wanted, I guess, to get a sense for, when you first became aware how important it was to kind of be advocates and talk about your disabilities and mental health, and how important for you it is for the society and for audiences to kind of get the message that you're trying to convey. So Ezra, if you wanted to go first.
Sure. Yeah, I've been making work around my illness and disability since I was 18, but I did not think that it was part of a larger conversation and something that actually was informed by and speaking to other people as well. I sort of always felt like I was kind of in my own space. And so I would say a few years ago is when I really came into disability communities and understood that, there's so much more than just me in the way of exploring illness and disability, and that artwork is a tool for actually engaging more people within those conversations. So actually, it's quite important for me to note that every time I show my work, it's with other sick and disabled artists. So I actually don't quite believe in the solo show as a method of exhibiting, because I feel it's actually partly disingenuous to what my work does or my work is about. And so I always find it to be more compelling and stronger to hear different understandings related to my work, or the things I'm discussing in my work. And so I would say when I came into the disability community, I understood that there are other artists working in such a variety of ways and media that I, continually am learning from them. And that's something that I think is a driving factor for me making my own work. So thinking a lot about learning how to even create more accessible entry points into my own work is something that came out of being engaged with disability community. And so right now I'm working on making rugs, and so I'm thinking about tactility and touch as a knowledge maker, and part of that comes from my work as an educator, working within access programs, so to speak, is what, access code for disabled people. And so there's really such a lack of engagement within our cultural programming that is geared towards disabled people to also think about what it means to be disabled. And that's something that, I believe is like an important step for, cultural spaces to engage in.
And I think also still in this day and age, when people talk about artists with disabilities, a lot of the times I believe it's linked with like art therapy only. I think that's the first thing people kind of think about. So it's definitely, you know, it's slow steps, I guess, we need to take to kind of break away from that mold. Yo-Yo, would you like to share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, can you repeat the question? I think I had like a bit of a disconnection there.
Yeah, no problem. So I guess when the first time you became aware of how, you know, important talking about your disability was, and making sure, I guess, how important an audience, you know, what they take away from your work, I guess, how important that is.
Right. I think there's a lot there in terms of just like how much people are comfortable with that on their own, because I know everyone has a different journey and everyone has a different conception of how they want to identify publicly. And yeah, like I think there's a lot of people I know who don't identify as disabled. I'm still currently figuring out my disability status. I identify as chronically ill. So, you know, there's like a lot of different interpretations of what that really means, culturally, especially. So I think for me, it was important to start making work about it because I was like at a crossroads where I couldn't not make work about it anymore. It was just like such a huge part of my life. And it was so difficult to try to talk to someone about it. So I ended up making the journal to have a better way of showing people what was going on. So yeah, like I think for me at least, actually making work about it has given me the language to better talk about disability and to come into a more political nature of living. Because yeah, like when you're doing stuff on your own, it's great, but when you can do stuff with others, and be not only a self-advocate, but also an advocate for a group of people, that has truly shaped my perception of what art can be and what art can do. So yeah.
Thank you. And you, Rose, what are your thoughts?
I think when I went to college at 18, that was, you know, a major life transition. And they say, you know, a lot of OCD related things, anxiety related things, what have you, can kind of present themselves during a major shift in your life. I was always anxious as a kid, but I never really thought about it that much. Always worried, separation anxiety, everything, but it really kind of all hit me at once when I went to school. And yeah, I just felt very alone, and I felt like I couldn't exactly explain it to even my parents, my family, because, you know, some things like with OCD is really hard to explain, like why they make sense. They don't make sense, but if they make sense to you, like it's a whole thing. It's really difficult. And I didn't know anybody else who had OCD. And there weren't a lot of, at least artists that I knew of, that were, you know, making music about anxiety and depression, although there are now a lot more. So yeah, I think I do this for myself in order to, you know, make my intrusive thoughts and whatever tangible, and it helps me to write everything down and see it kind of in a physical way and be able to dissect it and dismantle it. But yeah, I just think I do it for myself, but I also do it for other people so that they don't feel as alone as I once felt. And I hope that they can take something away from it at the end of a show or at the end of this or whatever.
Yeah. We do have 5 minutes before we go live with our Q&A from the audience. I did have one last, I guess, comment / question for either of you three if you wanted to answer this. Obviously, with our situation right now and COVID-19, there's a lot of isolation and loneliness happening. What advice would you give for people who who are, I guess, you know, battling with their mental health issues, you know, what ways can they maybe stay creative to kind of get through this time, which is pretty challenging and new for most of us, I would say. If there's any of you that want to jump in. Anyone want to talk about? Yep, Yo-Yo.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very tough question. I don't know if I can give any advice really, but what's been helping me has been just feeling, oh, can you guys hear me?
I think Yo-Yo froze a little bit. Okay, well, I think Yo-Yo's frozen. Do Ezra, Rose, do you want to jump in and just talk about, I guess, you know, what we're living in and what advice you'd have to give to people?
Sure. Yo-Yo's back, by the way, and just needs to
Great.
be unmuted by someone who can do that.
Sorry, my computer has been overheating lately.
No worries.
Just all the remote chats. But yeah, I've been thinking a lot about grief, and I've been thinking about letting there to be some space for that, because I think there's a lot of feelings of loss and a lot of feelings of yeah, just like unending loss. So I've been really wanting to make more space for that in my life and to have moments to do nothing. I think there's been a lot of this need to like fill this void of, you know, and I think, you know, while that's important and that there should be a balance, I think there's been a lot of moments where I felt like not doing anything and just being and just taking in what's happening like minute by minute. And yeah, I think there is a lot here that can teach us a lot about ourselves. And I don't really want to be distracted by, you know, the pressure to keep going when there could be some really beautiful glimmers of insight. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think we are going to start with the Q&A right now. I know Yora is working on setting that up. Thank you again for our audience for being with us today. I'm excited to hear what questions you have for us.
Thank you so much just for sharing all of this, first of all. So we have a few audience questions. The way it's going to work is we can actually open your mics, and if you want cameras too, and have you ask questions live. But we do have one question that I'm going to read out, and the first one is for Ezra. Ezra, have you thought of making your masks performative by wearing them in public, or have you already?
Sure. Yeah, I think performing, performing caretaking is not something, or like even taking care of myself is not something that that I think is useful. Generally, I think, you know, I'm not taking selfies wearing a mask and being like, it's COVID-19, right? These are things that are not special, in fact, right? It's actually part of what people need to do to take care of themselves, and that's something that should be ongoing. And, you know, I understand for some people that it's currently happening. They're like, you know, really interested in sharing that aspect of them, but I know so many sick and disabled people have posted wearing masks for so long, and even if they wear them out in public, get made fun of or questioned. So that's just a brief answer to just like to why I don't believe in performing in that way, or making them performative. They were made using an actual mask, and just my brother and I worked on them together, and he photocopied a mask and like on both sides and uploaded it into Photoshop, and we inputted the text that we wrote those are some lines from a text, an essay that we wrote for visual aids, and I posted the link in the chat. So no, I think we're going to, for right now, not wear those out. I'm not even going out, actually. So yeah, sorry if that sounded so callous, but I do think there are some issues with performativity and illness that, you know, fashion labels have actually been on the like negative side of, kind of culturally speaking, of ripping those aesthetics off, and not paying due to, you know, it's like part of people's actual lives. So yeah.
Thank you. And there is a second part of this question for Yo-Yo, and then I will also pass it on to some people who want to ask their questions live. Yo-Yo, does intersectionality, Asian American identity come up in your tracking that you share, or is it coded in your journals?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's hard for me to imagine myself tracking in a way that's non-intersectional. But I guess like explicitly, I need to like kind of look at it again. I don't really like, there have been moments for sure of just like a lot of moments when I'm marking like the past traumas aspects, at least, which is like the smallest part of the circle. That's very much deeply rooted in just my upbringing, and also how, you know, illness is not something that you can speak about, and how there's a lot of like entanglement of me trying to, you know, continue to speak about it without jeopardizing my community or jeopardizing, you know, my own sanity, I guess. So I think there is a lot there when it comes to the trauma aspect. There's also like a lot there when it comes to marking down future visions, because I know there is a lot of this kind of language building that's happening within the community, especially around mental health, that I'm like very much working towards kind of gathering a group of people to have more discussions about. So yeah, kind of like envisioning what we, you know, want to be in the present moment, and carrying that forward so that hopefully one day that can be a realized vision. So yeah.
Thank you. And we have the next question from Maya Fell. Your mic is open. You can ask.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for doing this. I think it's a really great panel. My question was for all of the panelists, how do you anticipate disability awareness progressing after so many have had to change or adapt their routines, similar to those with a disability or chronic illness, due to the coronavirus?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, just asking about how you might anticipate disability awareness progressing after so many people have had to change their own routines, similar to those with a disability or chronic illness may have to change their routines because of coronavirus.
I don't really know. Ezra and I are both very like pretty skeptical people when it comes to that kind of situation. But I mean, Ezra, I'm sure you can speak a little bit on that, because I know you wrote an ArtNet interview article kind of about this.
Yeah, I think, you know, I also just want to give space to Rose first, if you feel you want to answer this.
I have a very small thing to add. It's a little, it's more mental health related than whatever. But in terms of now the coronavirus, everyone is being strongly encouraged to constantly wash their hands. And that is actually a symptom of some people's OCD and, you know, contamination fear and obsessive hand washing and stuff. So it is interesting to kind of see everyone around me, my family, doing the things that I would normally do, and now they feel like they have to do it. So it's kind of an interesting flip. But yeah, I'm not sure if awareness necessarily will stay, if this will be a long-term thing, but it is interesting at the moment to witness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to add that, similar to what you were just mentioning, in terms of like how you're seeing just even immediately people in your life kind of either mimicking or modifying their behaviors to things that perhaps were told or like thought of as, or are in fact like the ways different experiences with illness and disability play out, right, with the things that one might do in their own lives. And so this is where we have to understand or think about what normalcy means. And, I think it will progress and will change if we deny the fact that there was a norm, that there was a normal, or that living with illness generally, like societally, is the norm, right? So I think that's the only way for awareness around disability and illness to progress is a really critical shift in understanding of what illness means, that it's not an individual thing that, might play out in some way in the, routine and behavior, but that it's something that we all are collectively aware of, and shifting our timeframes for, right, our modes of understanding labor practices, right, or social and cultural engagement, for example, like we're doing right now. I know personally, and then from so many other disabled and sick people, that we were denied options to learn remotely before this, that we are denied and or fired from jobs because of not having or of this like able-bodied understanding of professionalism and showing up to a space, even if work can be done remotely. And so, and cultural programming that's, was forever thought of as like had to happen on site. But look at us right now, we're having this really engaging panel and sharing of our work. And so all these things were denied and seen as impossible. So we need to also consider why we were doing that, and like culturally speaking, and individually speaking, particularly to people who have positions of power. And I think we have to progress in a way that what's happening now is the norm. It continues to be a norm that we can then build upon to create even further access for everyone who needs, to continue living.
Yeah. Absolutely. I feel like there's this idea, this like false idea of like wanting to return back to something, when we should really be taking the things that we're learning now in order to move forward. Yeah, I'm reminded by this quote that I often say, which is this jazz drummer, Milford Graves, once said, he said, like, healing as not a way to return to a past state, but a process of becoming. So I think there's a lot there in terms of needing to confront and, recognize what's happening right now and using them in our future when, we will be needing it.
And the future, that's the funny part, is like the future is already happening, right? Like we're experiencing the need for it, or the need for all of this was already there.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of like happening on a large scale.
Thank you. We have another question from Ingrid Pau. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this properly, but Ingrid, you're on.
Am I unmuted?
You're good. We hear you.
Great. For those who may not be able to see properly, I am a white/Latino girl sitting in my bed. I happen to have epilepsy, another invisible disability, and I've been making artwork, movies about it for over 7 years now. So I respect all of the work that I've seen today, particularly about how you're, dealing with pain, visualizing it, and also medication. That's a big thing that I really went hardcore for 7 years ago. But my main question was, do you find your artwork to be a type of meditation for yourself or a form of memory for yourself in the future? Because I know, looking at some of my artwork from the past, that's not exactly what I felt like at that time. But when I look at it 7 years later, I'm reminded of what that first feeling was, of what I did feel like when I first had epilepsy, or in the middle phase, or vice versa. So I don't know if you guys view this as something even more personal as well, that you can look at in 10 years and try to remind yourself of what you felt like. I'm all hardcore about how being vulnerable is very universal, and I see that in all three of your artworks, and so I applaud you for that. So that was my question.
Yeah, I definitely see at least the journaling as definitely a form of meditation for me. I think meditation can come in many forms, so thank you for saying that. And yeah, for me, it's been writing and drawing, and thinking about the process of doing it has been such a huge part of the practice, how the process is the product, you know? And yeah, like I see this as kind of like a soft data archive for myself. So in terms of memory, as this being a form of memory and something I can look back on, absolutely. Like, I still find myself going back to last year's journal entries and then seeing just like the progression of how I've been coming into disability community and finding language for my experiences. And a lot of those journals are up at the JCC right now. So it's kind of like this interesting time capsule archive of this process. So yeah.
So we have room for one more question for the audience. If you guys have anything, any last minute thoughts, you'd like to ask the three panelists, now's your chance. And then we're gonna have one final song from Rose. So does anyone have any last minute questions for these guys?
I believe we have one question from Amy. So Amy, I'm going to open your mic.
Okay. Question. Do you think that we will see an increase in the diagnosis of OCD after the coronavirus calms down?
That is a really interesting question.
What?
That's a really interesting question. Maybe. I wish I had a better answer. I think maybe it'll at least bring to light some awareness, but possibly, I don't know, it might trigger some people to realize that they have it. But that's, I don't have a better answer. That's a really interesting question though. Thank you.
I think I will add, just in terms of mental health diagnoses, I think what is happening right now, there may not necessarily be an increase in diagnosis, but there may be an increase for people feeling more comfortable to ask help and find resources. You know, they may have not necessarily acknowledged or felt comfortable talking about what they have, but for example, I work for Fountain House, an organization that you know, helps a lot of adults with mental illness, and I think there may be an increase just in terms of, you know, people seeking out resources like Fountain House in order, you know, to kind of help their feelings and help kind of with their battle they're going through. So I don't know if there's, again, an increase in diagnosis as much as just people being more open about what they have, and wanting to talk about it a little more after the situation hopefully ends. So great. Well, thank you everyone and for the audience today and for your questions. Rose, we're excited to hear your last song to kick us off at the end of this panel, so whenever you're ready.
Awesome. All right. This song is kind of a, a complete shift from the first one. It's a little bit happier. I think it's also important to acknowledge the fun, playful things that can come out of, you know, anxiety and feeling the need to write, not just upsetting and whatever. So I wanted to end on a positive note. So this is a song about when you can't stop thinking about somebody, and it's called No Escape. So here we go. This black hair with a little too much confidence, yeah, and I'm aware that no amount of common sense can make me care a penny less about him. Just when I almost catch my breath, the granite looks back at me, laughs and says, good try, kid. But tell me, did you really think you'd win? 'Cause he's living so comfortably inside of my mind, you'd assume that he owns a place like real estate. He lies in wait, got no escape from this love, from this love. And if you see me at a party, chances are I'm only partly there, drowning down in a bottle of pink Moscato, just trying to flood my sorry blood. And just when I almost catch my breath, if the granite looks back at me, laughs and says, good try, kid. But tell me, did you really think you'd win? 'Cause he's living so comfortably inside of my mind, you'd assume that he owns a place like real estate. He lies in wait, got no escape, yeah. He's living so comfortably inside of my mind, you'd assume that he owns a place like real estate. He lies in wait, got no escape. I don't really know why he takes up so much space. Apparently I've misplaced logic and reason, committed treason against my rationality. Reality is this a care, so my heart is a cheap motel with no vacancy, cause I fell mistakenly. And now I just need to get back on my feet, 'cause he's living so comfortably inside of my mind, you'd assume that he owns a place like real estate. He lies in wait, got no escape, yeah. He's living so comfortably inside of my mind, you'd assume that he owns a place like real estate. He lies in wait, got no escape, this love, this love. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. And thank you everyone for joining us today for Expressions Through Art. Thank you to Ezra, Rose, and Yo-Yo this evening. And I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday.
Thank you so much, really, to all of you. Amanda, also to you and to Fountain House for really doing amazing work, and for running the gallery as well, which I hope we would all be able to come visit after we're all back to in other times.
I would love
that. Really, all of the artists, I think this was a fascinating conversation. I don't think we've ever really done this with ReelAbilities before. We usually focus on films, so it was so great to hear some insights from your own work and your own art, and hopefully we can all follow you. I did want to mention that we can actually add any contact information or links onto the event page on the website afterwards. So if anyone would like to either get some more information or contact one of the artists if they would like to share, we can put it on there so people can reach them and find more about their work. And at this point, I just wanted to say that these are very difficult times, and some very terrible things are going on with the world right now. And I just want to acknowledge that this is what's happening, but also thank all of you for coming out here and having a sense of community and sharing this time together, which I think is really important as far as how we can really help each other get through this at this time. As far as ReelAbilities, tomorrow is our closing night, so I hope you can join us for other events. And I did want to say for last thing is I do want to thank the Marlene Myerson JCC Manhattan for allowing the festival to happen. We are still able to run this because our staff and team are still here doing things from home. And also thanking the Arts and Ideas Department that we work with closely, and Megan Whitman for putting on the art exhibit and working with Ezra and Yo-Yo for the gallery that's at the JCC right now. So thank you, all of you. We are now about to start another screening of Amy's Victory Dance at 7:30. So if you have tickets to that and can join us, please go ahead, and have a good evening. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Everyone check the
Bye.
chat for links also by other artists and a fundraiser.
Thanks, Ezra. Bye, good night.
Thank you.